Thanks very much. With respect to the issue of terminal illness or end of life, this is an issue that Canadians have spoken loudly and clearly on it in many different polling results, on the external panel that was done in the significant focus groups and polling that they did. Quebec requires that. All U.S. jurisdictions that allow assisted suicide require it. Why did your Liberal government choose not to require terminal illness and end of life?
Well, the object of our legislation is to ensure that we respond, of course, to the Carter decision and provide medical assistance in dying to those individuals that meet the eligibility criteria, all four of the elements that are contained in terms of grievous and irremediable. And this is to provide the ability for patients that meet those criteria to have a peaceful passage into death. And our legislation, while somewhat different from other jurisdictions, 6 of the 9 jurisdictions look to, and their legislation focuses on end of life. We have put in place the reasonably foreseeable other conditions that need to be taken into account by the medical practitioners in their totality. There's a degree of flexibility in terms of what has become or what become reasonably foreseeable means, but we made a conscious decision to ensure that we provide legislation and a regime that enables persons who are approaching their end of their lives to be able to make decisions about the ability to have dignity and have that peaceful passage into death.
Okay, just very briefly on the issue of nurse practitioners, you indicated earlier that this, for your government, was an issue of access. That's why you, unlike almost everywhere, are going to allow nurse practitioners to approve a patient allowing this, assess competency, and administer it. And you also spoke about that this would be required in more remote areas, but your legislation provides no limitations on that. So this could be accessed anywhere in Canada. It could be downtown Toronto. So there aren't any limitations, and I wondered why, if that was the reason, was to promote access in these specific rural or remote areas. Why did you do that, and where did you get the basis of nurse practitioners? You mentioned Colombia earlier. Is that somewhere that you obtained something like an unusual requirement like this?
Well, you're quite right, Senator, and the reality of the different areas in our country, individuals do not have access to physicians. We certainly recognize that the regulation of nurse practitioners and laws around nurse practitioners being able to provide medical assistance in dying is within the jurisdiction of the provinces and territories, and they can legislate in that regard. I will say that we had the opportunity to meet with Canadian Nurses Association and have a deep appreciation for the substantive work that nurse practitioners do, and the ability to engage and have substantive relationships with individuals in communities, and recognize for the access reasons and the substantive regulatory requirements for that profession that would need to be in place depending on what the provinces and territories indicate should be in place. That's their decision with respect to nurse practitioners and being able to provide medical assistance in dying in those regions.
Do you mean then that some provinces could allow nurse practitioners to do this and others could say no, nurse practitioners cannot do it, even though it's in your bill that it can be either doctors or nurse practitioners?
That's correct. It's up to the provinces and territories to determine if nurse practitioners will be able to provide medical assistance in dying.